2.06, Human Resources. Dr. King?
Chairman Houston, members of the board, 2.06 will consist of human resources and the staffing update to be presented by Dr. Myers-Dobb.
Good afternoon, Dr. King, Dr. Houston, Ms.
Good
Doyle,
afternoon.
and school board members. I am here to give an update on staffing. You did not receive an update on the termination report since September just ended yesterday, but you will get that at the next meeting. For elementary schools right now, we have 8 classroom vacancies, and this has increased as a result of the 10-day count. We had a committee that convened and reviewed the PTR, and the committee consisted of Dr. Birdsong, Dr. Simmons, the executive directors of schools, Dr. Thornton, Ms. Ingram, and HR staff. So we went through and reviewed the PTR differences for each school, and we had to make some changes based on the new PTR on the 10-day count. So we had 10 teachers that had to move from one building to the other, and 9 of those were general educators, 1 was a special educator, and then we also had 3 paraprofessionals that also transferred to another building based on numbers and needs of students with disabilities. In addition to that, we had, yes, pupil-teacher ratio, yes. In addition to that, we have, to those changes, we also have 7 new allocations at certain schools due to an increase of their pupil-teacher ratios. So of the 8 existing vacancies at the elementary schools, 7 of those are new positions that have to be filled as a result of that. For secondary, there is 1 vacancy at, in math at Northside Middle School. For resources, we have 0 special education vacancies right now. We have 1 library media specialist vacancy, which is right now being covered by 2 part-time teachers who are both licensed in library media specialists. For gifted resource, we have 0 vacancies in gifted resource. We have 2 interventionist positions that are still vacant, 1 at Granby Elementary and 1 at Ocean Air Elementary. And for the math and the reading specialists, we have 1 elementary math specialist vacancy in which somebody has been identified to fill the position. It's just a matter of finding a backfill. Then we also have 1 secondary math specialist position, which is the one that was housed at Lafayette that has transferred to CAB for this year. And then for reading specialists, we have 1 secondary reading specialist vacancy, and again, that was the one that was housed at Lafayette, which has been moved to CAB for this year. And nurse, just a quick update on the nurses. We have 24 of the 25 positions right now for nurses have been filled. And that's the update on staffing. Any questions? Yes.
You may not be the best person to answer, but you might be able to speculate. Does that mean that pupil enrollment at the elementary levels was up, but was not at the high school or middle school? And if it's not you, then we'll defer that to whomever wishes to handle it.
Based on the numbers that we reviewed,
Right.
it is up slightly at middle school and high school, but not as much as it was at elementary.
Not requiring the staffing.
There is 1 change that's going to be at the high school level, but there's a teacher that's housed, he's at Booker T. Washington. He is going to be at Booker T. Washington teaching English on odd days and Norview High School on even days.
Okay.
And that was because of the influx at Norview High School. So that was the only change at secondary.
Generally speaking, thanks.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.06, Operations. Dr. King?
Item 2.07, operations, will consist of the CIP plan update to be presented by Dr. Simmons.
Dr. King and Dr. Houston, members of the board, I would like to give Rex Gay an opportunity to present the CIP comparison and answer questions, the 2 of us, that you might have.
Good afternoon. You think that was quick? This should be a little bit quicker. What we've presented, or what we're going to present this afternoon, is an update to our capital improvement projects for fiscal year 13, 14, and 15. And also, we've also presented the facility assessment overview. And all of this information was provided in your packets. And so I don't think you want me to go through each project, but I can answer any questions that we might have.
So I have two questions, and one is, have any of these projects, or are any of these projects underway? And have we spent any of the CIP yet in this fiscal year?
For 15, these projects are underway, and when I say underway, they're all into the design phase,
Design phase.
okay? So basically, these projects are just getting started.
Okay. And then, we generally anticipate about the same amount of money each year.
Right.
Are we looking now ahead in looking at the design phase now, or the early planning stages, so that when we get the money July 1, we can start putting the money to use when the children are not in the schools?
Yes.
We can get ahead of the game?
Yeah, we can look ahead and we can do all we can up to the point of providing a purchase order for the engineer to get started.
Right,
And the reason is because the money doesn't come until after July.
right,
So, we can't create a PO for that.
right. I'm just
But now
suggesting.
we can speak with engineers, we can show them projects that we want them to take a look at, and we can accept proposals for review. But that's about as far as we can go.
And is that a practice that we're currently doing?
Yeah, we do that all the time.
Because I just would suggest we want to get ahead of the game, and if we get the money July 1, let's start spending it July 1 with projects that are ready to go, when the kids aren't in the school.
Here's the catch to that. We can get the proposals, the engineers can know that the project's out there. Until they receive a purchase order, they're not gonna start work.
Right,
And so, we can't start a project until they can give us the documents to advertise for bid. So that's gonna take them at least 30 days, depending on what level of project it is. Sometimes it might take 2 months, and then we can get them bidded out. So, even if we can talk them into starting, then we're really cheating the procurement law.
yeah, I'm not suggesting that,
I know.
but I'm just thinking of how we can really be sharp with our money come July 1.
I think that's as sharp as we can be. I mean, we've made the contacts. Like I said, about 15, those projects are underway because they're in design. We talked to engineers about upcoming projects throughout the year, but we can't officially get them to start until after we receive that money and get them a purchase order.
Okay, thank you.
Brad?
I've had the privilege of being on the construction committee for 3 years, this is my 4th year, and it is nothing short of amazing how Rex and his team moves money around to get the projects done. I'm blown away by the fact that that money is spent wisely and is spent as quickly as possible, and as beneficial to the taxpayer. The taxpayer can rest assured that that money is spent well.
Thanks.
Warren?
This is not a statement or a question to you, Mr. Gay, it's to all of us. Since 2009, things have been deferred. The item affectionately known as master milestones, the item won't come up today. We don't have time to get to it today, but it will come up in November if we continue to have those chats. And it's under deferred maintenance, deferred transportation, deferred technology. And so right now, I would hate us to say that this is the hard and fast, because as we chat, something may come up. I have to tell you, when things have been deferred since 2009, I'm going to ask in a month or two, really? Is this all there is? And that's not a criticism of you or anyone else, but I know what happens. Sometimes when someone 5 years ago said, I need X, and they said they need X 4 years ago, and they said they need X 3 years ago, and the funds are declining and you're in worse shape, sometimes there are deferred things that need to be reconsidered. And I think that will come up if we have time to discuss deferred maintenance in November. Just a warning, kind of a warning.
Yes.
Can you explain the Poplar Halls Maury Tidewater Park scenarios. I know that on the one report, it had a status for roof tied to Poplar Halls. I wasn't quite following that. And then I saw we got resources for the Maury Auditorium repair. And then I know once before you had discussed how we had money for Tidewater Park, but we moved that around. Can you just
Right.
bring us up to speed on that again?
Yeah, here's what we had done. We listed Poplar Hall's roof replacement as a project that needs to be done. And then, as you might remember, back in the summer is where we had the problem with the auditorium at Maury.
Right.
All right, so the Maury project became a more pressing issue. So all we did is took a look at this list to see which project we could put on hold. And while we just reprioritized that money and shifted it to the Maury Auditorium.
So you're saying we put the Poplar Hall's roof on hold?
Right.
And but the money that we received for Maury wasn't sufficient. You had to take
Well,
money from.
here's the thing, I don't think we received it yet.
I mean, on paper. But on what you have, that's what I'm trying to understand,
Right.
what's on paper. So are you saying that money that we had initially allocated for
Poplar Hall.
Poplar Halls, we're taking that?
Yeah, we're
plus-
taking that, no,
plus-
we're just taking what's at Poplar Halls and putting it at the Maury Auditorium. And then, once we receive the money for the Maury Auditorium, we'll put it back at Poplar Halls.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we would only do that if we knew we could take care of the roof and patch it to where we wouldn't have damage inside the building.
For Poplar Halls.
Poplar Halls, right?
So we're anticipating, so what are we gonna do with we're doing something with Poplar Halls this year, or we're not doing something with Poplar Halls this year? I guess what I'm trying to understand.
Well, when we met with the mayor, he indicated he was gonna give us funding for Maury's Auditorium. And so when we receive that, we'll put that on Poplar Halls and we'll replace that roof.
And then with Tidewater, something I read somewhere about it again. Oh, I'm sorry.
That was an example of how Rex moves money around to take care of pressing needs. And I was at the same meeting that the mayor said that we'll find the money. Now, hopefully that will come soon so we can follow up on the rest of the projects that we've had to. But Maury was such a pressing issue with the auditorium that they had to do it right away.
Oh, yeah, and it, right,
There's an update on the status. That's probably what you're talking about.
because there was something I thought I saw where,
You saw the Tidewater Park roof that was placed on hold as well.
right, and then it looked like we had reprogrammed that money to something else.
We did. We shifted that money to the north side masonry and roof replacement project.
And remind me, we have the Tidewater Park roof replacement on hold because we're trying to see whether or not we're gonna do a new school there.
Well, that was the initial reason to place it on hold. And so since we haven't heard much about that lately, we have decided that we still need to replace the roof, but we shifted from a built-up roof to a roof that's much less expensive. So it appears, since we put $1,800,000 at north side, and that was based on the engineer's estimate, it appears that we might have about $450,000 to $500,000 left out of that project. So we'll go right back to Tidewater Park and replace the roof.
So, well, pretty much what we see on this list are, like we knew we had the Maury situation where it was immediate health and safety concerns. But any of the others that we have there, these are just,
Their needs, but they don't present any imminent danger.
immediate.
Okay. Other questions? And just to, and again, to trumpet what Rex and his team do, they estimate what these projects are. We get an estimate from the architect through the A&E, and then takes that money, because a lot of times these projects come under budget, and takes that money and gathers it, cobbles it together to go to another project. It is simply amazing to watch this team work to do that. And we're very fortunate to have him because of that. Because we only get $3 million a year. We could use 10. and just to stay on top of things, but,
You think we should keep that?
no. Yes, yeah. He can stay. He can stay.
20 more years.
At least 4 more.
At least 4. No, we're not letting you off that easy.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Item 2.08, community engagement. Dr. King?
Chairman Houston, members of the board, item 2.08, community engagement, will be presented by Ms. Mather.
Good afternoon.
I just have a few items of update for the board today. First of all, our annual United Way Combined Charities campaign began on Monday of this week and runs through October 17th. Ms. Banks, board clerk, has provided all of you with your pledge forms. We're very, very pleased to be partnering with the United Way again. Of course, at the last board meeting, you received a presentation that demonstrated the real benefits of the partnership with the United Way for the school division. I would like to say a public thank you to our school division liaisons for the United Way, who currently are in every school and every department now, working with their colleagues to assist in facilitating the contributions. So thank you for that. The other item of update, we're very pleased today that the Parent View system that is in coordination with our Synergy system has gone live. Parents are beginning to receive the notification. The notification for parents about the system has been a collaboration led by Dr. Simmons and Information Technologies with support from communications and others at the school level as well as school leadership. The information about how parents can log on is on our website now, and we're have letters with parent credentials that some parents are reporting they've received in the mail as of today, and they will be receiving them over the next few days. We are seeing evidence already that parents are able to log on to the system. We're getting feedback questions, which is great, and we'll be spending the next few days assisting parents. Our information technologies team also created a tutorial video for parents about how to use the system, and that also is currently posted online. And then the very last item is something that we're excited about, and I just wanted to make you aware because you're going to hear more about it when you receive our strategic plan update soon. With the very strong leadership from school leadership development, Mr. John Coleman and Dr. Denise Charbonnet, our middle school and high school specialty program principals and coordinators have come together as a team to determine how we can bring the application processes in alignment for those programs. And we've had some very promising discussions there. We are in the process of working together for an online application process for the specialty programs to make it much easier for parents to access and also provide a common deadline for parents to provide that information. Mr. Coleman, if you had anything to add to that at this point.
Just that, we're looking for alignment in terms of making things easier for our parents, as well as to help out our teaching staff, particularly those teachers and counselors that do recommendations. If a parent is applying to, 2 or 3 different specialty programs, that just doubles and triples the recommendation process. If we can get a recommendation that will fit, for all 3, it will make things easier for our staff in terms of efficiency. At the same time, for our parents, we're looking at, right now we've got specialty programs, particularly at the middle schools, that have had different timelines for, when the applications need to be in or when they notified, parents of acceptance. We're trying to, get some common language across that in terms of deadlines across the board so that it makes it a little bit easier for our parents to make decisions. And for us, from a staffing standpoint, having those decisions made as we go into the staffing allocations so that we're actually reflecting what we need a little bit more efficiently.
And one of the benefits, of course, is that we know, and we've discussed this all together through the strategic plan process, that there's tremendous capacity to market more effectively to parents and families out there who would like to participate in our programs. And being able to have a consistent process that we can market will help that tremendously. And that was all I had for tonight.
Questions or comment? Rodney?
On the synergy with the student view, they got their credentials when? Or have they got
That will
theirs?
be the next step. The students will get their credentials soon, and Andrea.
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are.
I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm right here. Yeah, we are looking to give the students their login credentials mid to late October. What is available with the parent login, everything the parent sees, the students will be able to see assignments, grades, and everything as well. So currently, now that the parents are getting their login, students can use that to get to anything that they need to, and teachers can communicate via that way. Our next step is to get through and get the student logins, which they will be done through the schools and the PD specialists and those types of things.
And the other question, received lots of posts to my Facebook page and email and phone call every time there's something in the news, whether it's open campus or any other type of thing that's out there. People want to know how they can volunteer and support, participate. So if folks say they want to be mentors, or they got some program that works with bullying or this, that, and the other, what's the, I know we forward it to you, but sometimes it's not easy to do that. Is there some process that we communicate to the general public that if they have ideas or suggestions, what the preferred process is for communicating that back to the district?
Yes, we do have a process, and it's through our Norfolk Education Foundation, where people can sign up to be volunteers or mentors. And if that's what you're referring to.
I just use as an example. But
Okay.
I think I'm just trying to make sure whatever the process is, that we constantly
That we're constantly
communicate it,
advertising it.
because I don't think people immediately would think that if I want to help with something, if I have a program, go to the Norfolk Education page. 'Cause you all have I don't know Carl's name, but it's like different portals, right? What's the main portal if somebody wanted to suggest a program or be involved in a program? What's the website, if they're using a website, that they should use?
If they are suggesting something for Norfolk Public Schools to adopt or to use, the place we recommend that they write to us is www.npsk12.com/feedback. And we take that information and we provide it to the appropriate parties within the administration for consideration and review, and working with that interested party. If it is a person who's interested in volunteering or mentoring, they are going to come through our Norfolk Education Foundation portal. And I need to verify that URL and get that out to the board, and we will do that. And also, we can provide that as a handout as part of your board ambassador packet that we've provided to you all.
So I don't know, even if it's just like a little business card or something, because people ask all the time, it'd just be something to give them.
Others? Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Next item, 2.09, business and finance. You should have before you a budget planning and development handout. Dr. Thornton and I talked, and then we spoke, of course, with Dr. King about this afternoon's presentation. And I agreed that a very high-level look at timeline and process for planning our budget would definitely be a very timely presentation from him for tonight. Of course, it's not designed for us to actually analyze this tonight, but at least to consider the timeline that's presented, and perhaps at least talk about the next step as it relates to this. Dr. King?
Chairman Houston, members of the board, as Dr. Houston stated, item 2.09 will consist of business and finance update centering on potential areas of focus as we begin to brainstorm the work before us in preparation for the upcoming school year, believe it or not, because it's time to begin that strategizing around where we are. And so you'll have an opportunity to hear our Chief Financial Officer speak to potential areas of focus and also budget goals and possible items that would empower the board to make some decisions about what those goals should be. And so we begin that dialogue early and continue the utilization of a budget committee, both for our internal use as well as involvement of the board. So with that said, I would defer to Dr. Thornton.
Thank you, Dr. King. Dr. Houston, school board members, good afternoon. As both Dr. King and Dr. Houston mentioned, this one-page handout that you have today is just to provide the board with a very quick overview of some potential areas that the board may want to give some guidance and thought to as we begin to prepare for your consideration and action budget goals for 2015-2016 budget development process. Of course, today being October 1st, the board is scheduled to hold a pre-budget public hearing on November the 5th, at which time it may be beneficial for the board to have a set of recommended or proposed budget goals around which that pre-budget public hearing can be held to give our citizens an opportunity to see those budget goals, to provide some feedback, and then from there, the board could take consideration, and then when it comes back on November the 19th, the board will be prepared to adopt a set of budget goals, which would guide the work as we go forward with the budget committee, as well as we prepare for the 15-16 presentation that Dr. King will make to the school board in February. So with that being said, the first item on the handout that you have would be under the heading Potential Areas of Focus as it relates to budget planning and goal development. The first would be, again, you saw this last year, structural balance. And by that I mean that when we develop a balanced budget, ideally, it should be the ongoing expenditures should be supported by ongoing revenues. You know that's been a challenge the last several years for not only Norfolk Public Schools, but school divisions and localities around the Commonwealth. But we have to continue our efforts to get to a structurally balanced budget. We've made some strides the last couple of years. You'll recall that our 13-14 budget was built on the assumption that we would use one-time funding of $7.7 million. The current year's budget of 14-15 is built on the assumption of 5.9. So we're beginning to head in the right direction. And then next year, the expectation is that we would have even fewer dollars to use as fund balance. So we'll be forced to be structurally balanced because we won't have the level of one-time funding next year that we've had the last couple of years. So in that way, we'll be forced to do that, but we need to make a conscious effort in that area. The second item of focus potentially would be, of course, every year, competitive compensation plans for both instructional and support staff. That's always going to be a challenge every year. The third item there would be facility maintenance and improvement. You just heard an update from Mr. Gay regarding the uses of the $3 million fund. What I have here, this third item, is facility maintenance and improvement within the operating budget. Several years ago, as a budget balancing strategy, it's my understanding in talking with Mr. Gay and then looking at the history that his budget as it relates to repair and maintenance and facility improvement was cut significantly. And we have not been able to get those funds back into the base budget, but the buildings are getting older, the demands on the buildings are increasing, the costs are increasing, so at some point we need to prioritize. I would respectfully suggest to the board that we need to prioritize facility maintenance right there with, it may not sound very politically correct, but with human resources and staffing and compensation. Because we want to make sure, in keeping with our strategic plan, that our buildings are safe and efficient for students and staff. So I think we need to, the board should seriously consider what it will take to restore some of those funds back into the base budget. The fourth item for consideration would be, again, program evaluation and efficiency. Dr. King has charged Cabinet with going in and identifying the various programs, and we're not just talking about software programs. We're talking about instructional programs as well as software programs to identify, number one, what is it costing us and what is the return on that investment? And is it something that we need to continue or perhaps discontinue or even expand? But we need to begin that process, and it'll inform some of the decisions that we need to make in next year's budget and budgets going forward. And then fifth and finally, area of focus, of course, the continuing implementation of the strategic plan and whatever cost implications there would be associated with that. And then the second section there would be just an outline of the budget goal development process and key dates. If the board wished to adhere to those dates, then those would be recommended. Any questions?
So let me, thank you, Dr. Thornton. So let me make note of the fact that currently we do have 30 minutes designated for budget goal discussion on the 15th of October, for a little informal session prior to the business meeting. And some work could be done prior to that we could maybe have some discussions via email so that on this day we'll be really close to being able to adopt some budget goals. I think going into the November 5th public hearing with goals would certainly be to our advantage. We could publicize those prior to, and some of the dialogue, of course, with our community stakeholders could be around those budget goals and priorities and their feedback. Just a suggestion. So I think it would be ideal if we could nail these down on the 15th. The other thing that we might, we would probably should consider as well would be the deferred items from fiscal year 14, or 15, I should say. Should be reconsidered as a part of our discussion as well. Other questions, comments? Yes, Brad.
Will we have information on program evaluation and efficiency by the 15th?
I doubt that. But
Or
complete.
when would we expect that?
Let me circle back to Cabinet to try to get to secure a date that is reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to put any
Yeah.
unreasonable dates on it, I just wanted information.
I have some good news and some other news. The other news is under this schedule, I'm pretty certain that November 19th is really November 12th.
Correct.
Okay. In that particular case, because tonight with 55 minutes, I expect that we won't complete discussion on the milestones, and that there are many of those items that may have implications for the future budget. My concern is that unless we see these expressed budget goals for the next fiscal year as fluid and living and able to be modified, that subsequent conversations that may come from the milestones conversations be able to be entered. Example of which is deferred maintenance that Dr. Thornton mentioned. I just think we need to be ready to listen beyond this time, which is the 12th.
Right.
Now, here's the good news. On the 12th, because we had originally set it for the 12th, AERP has 1 million members, and they have their annual meeting on the 12th. And I must be there in the Charlottesville area, so I won't be here. So I will express my worries, concerns, interests, hopefully through channels for use on the 12th, but I cannot come in either by speakerphone or, because it's a big night, we got multiple hundreds of people there, and I have to be there. And we set that after we originally set this date. So that's the good news, that I won't be here, but perhaps can express my interests and areas and be open. I would hope we'd be open if something emerges from this 55 minutes tonight in time, hopefully that we have in November, that something may emerge.
Absolutely.
And if it doesn't emerge, then I'm excited.
Right. Well, give them my regards and tell them I'll see them in 2 years.
Will do.
Thank you. Was that the good news and the other news?
Yeah, the other news was, I think it's the 12th. The good news was I can't be here.
Okay. All right, other
Versus
comments?
the 19th.
Yes, because of VSBA,
Okay.
our regular,
Okay.
our business meeting for November is the 12th because of VSBA conference, the week of the 19th.
Okay.
Okay?
Just,
Yeah.
is it possible to go back, the last couple of years and, because Dr. Houston, you were saying that we may have some conversation via email between now and the 15th, to go back and look at what our budget goals were, what we ended up with, and then how we performed against the goal. To be honest with you, I just kind of lose sight after a while. It gets
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Because I know like at the end of last year when we were having the discussion, we thought we may have some excess, and then we were having a discussion over, do we use it for open campus, do we use it for this, do we use it for that? We're just trying to go back and see what we've trended, and how successful we were with addressing whatever it was that we had out there before, to help funnel into the upcoming conversation, plus whatever else is coming out of the master milestones and the strategic plan. And then my other question is, can you re-explain then what you're asking us to do between now and the 15th? I mean, what is it that?
Right, so what you just requested is what I thought we could do via email between now and then. That is, of course, receive last year's budget goals, to refresh our memory, as well as those deferred items, ITRT, I remember being one, and so I know there were two or three others. So we would get that information so that we would have it fresh, and any comments that we may want to share with each other, we could do that, and then on the 15th, at least be really close to framing up those goals. And I received what Dr. Stewart has offered, is that they may be somewhat fluid and not etched in stone, but we would at least have a clear idea of what those budget priorities are beginning to look like early on. And then perhaps by December, January, we firm them up. And because, of course, that's when we would be receiving in February the recommended budget from the superintendent, and then our continued work in March for adoption. So as much as we could get done here on the front end, I think would be ideal, especially leading up to the public hearing on the 5th, is that the 5th or what is it, the 5th of November. I think the more information we have about at least what we're thinking to share with the public, the better.
One thing that I might recommend is, thankfully, we were spared with a recent round of cuts at the state level. K through 12 was spared. So I wonder if we should now write a letter from the school board to the governor saying, thank you so much for sparing us this year, and that we would ask them to do the same next year, which I know is going to be very challenging, but if we get at least our word in of praise as well as a request, you know that the letters are coming in now to him about next year. So I'd like to get in ahead of the game on that one. And as we meet with our legislators, I know we've been talking
We
about.
have that on the agenda for the next meeting, to talk a little bit about that. It
Right.
would be good to, we may have that as an issue, and we may also have as the issue, depending on tonight's conversation, a really formal request to start school before Labor Day.
Yeah. So, again, I just think if we can start a good dialogue with the governor and ask pitch our request.
All right, gotcha. All right. Other comments for business and finance? Thank you, Dr. Thornton.
Thanks, Doctor.
Okay, to 10, Sam, did you have any comments before we move into the last part of our agenda?
No more than to thank the members of the team for providing the information that I think was relevant and beneficial for the board in a way that allows the board the governor's leadership team to know current status and begin to form implications for the work that needs to be done. So I applaud all of the staff members, members of cabinet, and others that supported the efforts to to see that happen. So that's it. I think the discussion that we had this evening and the presentations were pretty much on point. So I have no other remarks outside of what was presented.
And I concur with those sentiments. So the last item on the agenda, two items under board matters, under 211 there. Of course, agenda planning being the first. And again, I will call to your attention, the planning for October 15th is posted. I will certainly receive any comments or feedback on that agenda, and note as well that the work session for November has not been planned yet. We do meet on October the 9th for our agenda planning for November's work session. So any comments or questions at all on the 15th budget as it is posted? 15th agenda, I'm sorry.
Just one thing, under legislative,
Uh-huh.
I predict that what Ms. Doyle has mentioned will be critical, and I predict that, I would hope that from tonight's conversation, there'll be another item for those who have not visited their legislators yet, or those of us who wish to recontact them, some priority items that we want to push. So there was legislative issues listed under,
No, not on the 15th.
maybe the next month then.
It's
Right.
November 5th.
First one in November.
Right.
Yeah, just, we may have a few more minutes of time for that, because there could be a couple of hot issues we want to begin dealing with. And again, it's not an election at the state level this year, but the time to get them is before they get in Richmond.
Okay. Any other comments on the agenda? And Warren, you were requesting for the 9th, the 5th, I don't know why I keep thinking the 9th.
A lot more time.
Yes.
November, more time to follow up, because I don't think we'll complete this tonight.
Okay.
More than 55, please. 56 would be better, but more would even be better.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions or comments on the agenda planning, then we'll move on to our final item, which is our master milestones. And I'll turn it over to Warren and Noel.
Again, as Dr. Stewart had mentioned, we would like to request more time in November so that we can adequately address all of the issues that have come before us with regards to these milestones. And I would like to say thank you to Janelle, our clerk, for putting together our documents and getting all of the comments together and putting it into one single document. What we'd like to do is go through each of the topics that we have here and discuss the comments that were made, and Dr. Stewart will help to facilitate a good discussion about each of these points, and we'll see where those discussion topics take us from there.
Cool. I predict that we will get down to this point. We may get further, but given the time. Note the colors have changed from yellow to green. Green means it's a go. So if we find out that we're going to be going on some of these other things, we can change the color. But a little bit of history. Over the past 6 years, the school board has either voted or through consensus said, this is what we want in order to help students learn. At the OEI case, the judge heard the case, asked the attorneys, by the way, this concludes today, is this all you can do to help these students learn by taking over the schools? Obviously, the answer is no. So now it comes back to the local schools, because we put an end to that big state bullying of taking over schools at a local level. In 2014, our questions that have been, these are not votes, these are not decisions. These are just people said, yep, we want to talk about this further, and yep, I understand them. So the numbers don't represent votes, these are not decisions. This is, the first column said, yep, I understand these items, and the second column said, yep, I just want to have further discussion. This begins the discussion on the how, and if so, when we might begin doing some of these things. To help that, I'm just going to go down, starting with the first item. We're not going to talk about the schools because that's in the PPA process. Beginning the first item, we have what people have said, just initial reactions and thoughts presented. That was in your chair. Hopefully you had read it before. These are the items we're going to begin talking about. We're going to begin talking about at item number 7. And if you will quickly scan what people said at item number 7, what you get a sense for, I think, is there's support for moving forward. Remember, when you see WS, that refers to me. I have an interest in kind of taking this 3-year stall process. I'm sorry to infer something, but the 3-year process since we said go, and trying to turn it into some action. So I'd like to open it up now, talking about the very first item. People said, yep, I understand it. People said, yep, I support further discussion. This begins the further discussion. 2 people said, I think we could be operational by 16. 1 person said 19. All this is tentative. So now the question is, if we were to begin to have something to consider for the next budget, if we were to begin what we're going to do from now on, I entertain our board members, all of us, to say, what do you think? What do you want to do?
If I could, when it comes to CTE, there's a group that has gathered, and at this point, and I'll have Dr. King and Dr. Robinson can share as well, and Dr. Houston, but at this point, I believe Kenyatta, along with the city, is working together to put together the prospectus, and there are others that are looking at other issues in terms of financing and governance and so on. So there is progress being made in the planning stages, and I think we just need to further those discussions and then bring them back here to the board and to the community, frankly, so that we all know where we are moving forward.
Anybody, I think we don't need to point. If you got something to say, just say it. And by Mr. Robinson, Dr. Robinson, want to go?
Well, only just to add that at this point, information from a programmatic standpoint has been provided to the city manager's designee, and that the expectation was that then it was going to be merged into the prospectus template, that those programmatic items have been provided, and I know that governance is a separate piece, but we've also worked on options of what governance could look like, not to dictate that process, but to give examples of what some of the major CTE high schools or career academies have used as governance models. So we're moving forward with that. Dr. Savigny, I don't know if this week or here recently, Kenyatta has given an update as to the response from the city around the next scheduled meeting time, or what she has reported as of recent.
She and I discussed this yesterday, and she said as of close of business yesterday, she had not received any indication that the big team was coming back together. It was her understanding from Morgan in the city manager's office that there were subcommittees that were working on different components of the prospectus, but Morgan had not seen the entire document, nor had Kenyatta, but we have submitted our pieces of that, and there are subcommittees that are working, as Ms. Doyle alluded to, in regard to completing that.
So then my question would center on who's on those subcommittees, and because I don't believe that any of my administration is.
No.
So again, I think there's some unanswered questions as to what the next steps would be.
Sure. And I have a scheduled meeting next week, and so conversations are continuing. And I think what was really important is that we all agree conceptually on a couple of things. Certainly programming is on our side of the equation of this, but governance, the governance component is also a decision-making point. As you see, I mentioned on my document that there's still some decision-making points that's got to be made before we can get things back moving. But we are having conversations to continue moving this project forward. And
Because we only
a
have
lot of
55
folks are very
minutes.
excited about it.
Because we only have 55 minutes, I'm going to ask, is there any other pertinent, relevant comments anyone wants to make now on this topic? Because we're going to try through. Anybody just say.
Just one real quick.
Yeah.
The funding, trying to identify funding streams from the philanthropy, from business, from the state, from the federal government to the city. That's part of the process, is looking for where we're going to come up with that kind of money. But that's starting to be fleshed out now, too.
Just one point of clarification. Dr. Houston, you were saying that programming is on the school system side of the house. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Oh, certainly, this is a partnership initiative, obviously. GNC is a major partner with this, and in terms of collaboration, there are representatives from a couple of different members of our community. There are certain things that certainly we would do together, and there are other things that I think certain entities are specifically responsible for, and programming is certainly what the school district is responsible for. And by that I mean the curriculum as it relates to the career technical education piece and academics as well.
With no further comments, I'm going to move to the next item, simply because what I'm hearing is us saying this is a kind of a non-approved PPEA, and that it's out of our hands and someone else is deciding it. So I don't think we can, you saw what I said. I said I wanted the superintendent to bring some kind of proposal that said, by this date, we're going to have it, this is how we're going to get it, this is how we're going to fund it. If we're not at that point of having that proposal, but eventually I personally would like to see a superintendent's recommendation, and then the school board to be a little bit more in charge of this decision, personally.
Would it be beneficial if we got an update from the principals in the committee?
Again, I'm ready to move on to the next. Right now, I see it in never, never. The answer to that is, Dr. Robbins, is it seems to be in that same never, never land state it has been since someone said 3 years ago, we can do this next year. I'd like to kind of move it into a planned state, but I don't think we're there yet, but obviously someone will tell us when we're there.
Okay.
Next item, K8. If I analyze all the comments here, what I think most people see, remember the mission prior to any of us going on the board, and then was to have a K8 school associated with each high school to offer a variety of options, and at the point at which, if Granby becomes associated with the new school in Lafayette, Winona area, then we may be at a point of saying, maybe we've accomplished this, maybe it's done, and maybe we don't need to go further until we figure out what's going on at CTE. And so I'd just like to hear any comments or reactions to that. But I read just about what everyone said, and it seemed like many people were saying, I think we're done here. We're not going to propose any future K-8 schools at this point. This was just a dream. We put Crossroads to Norview, Ghent to Maury, maybe, not sure where we're pairing Camp Estella, but maybe to Booker T, maybe to whatever, and then the Lafayette Winona area school to Granby. So are we done here? Any further comments on that item? Anybody, go ahead.
First comment with the pairings. I think that the whole notion of the pairings may be a notion that resided with former board.
Yes.
I don't know that the community sees Crossroads being paired up with Norview and the school formerly known as Lafayette Winona being particularly paired up with Granby. So I think that as we move into choice, I think we can take that verbiage away, having it paired. The point that I wanted to bring up and have this as a beginning discussion with everyone is, right now we have Lafayette, school formerly known as Lafayette, as a 3 through 8. And I've brought this up several times before, and I'm not criticizing the concept of it being 3 through 8, but I just want to have, if we're going to start off 3 through 8, fine. For parents with kids in the elementary schools, when you have siblings at other schools and you're trying to get them into this program, it's going to make decision-making a little bit difficult. So what I would like for the board to do is to leave the option open of Lafayette Winona, whatever we decide to name it, to be a possible K-8 program. So that when Mr. Smeagol is applying for applications for the International Baccalaureate middle school years or pre-years program, that we do not pigeonhole ourselves into only allowing it to be 3 through 8. Because if there is a need, if we see feedback from parents saying, you know, I really wish I would put my kid in the 3rd grade, but I have 2 other ones that are in 1st and 2nd grade at this school, and it's gonna make transportation and things difficult. If we get enough of that feedback and we say, okay, maybe we need to open up a couple of K1, 2 classes, we have the option to do that.
Dr. Simmons and Dr. Sabiki, can you all think back to the study, the comprehensive study, because there was a clear, and I don't have it in front of me, but there was a clear reason why the whole notion of 3-8 versus K-8 was proposed for that. Now, it could be that we have to go back and take a look.
We need
Go
to
ahead and take
look,
a
I
look.
think it
Okay.
has to do numbers, but, yeah.
Okay, so we can take a look.
Wasn't
see
there,
what the
there was
implications
a
are.
specific reason for keeping it at the 3-8 was because of reconfiguration.
I remember the building itself didn't have facilities to house
The smaller
the
toilets.
smaller children, and it was a budgetary concern. I'm just saying that as we are moving forward with the process, I don't want to limit Mr. Smeagol in any of his applications, because they're very expensive applications for the International Baccalaureate, other things that he might need to do, so that we can include those years of.
Will that affect it, though?
I don't know, I'm just
Well,
saying.
Maybe that's the question to ask.
Mhm.
Is the fact that it's only gonna be a 3-8 gonna affect the application process if we add 1st and 2nd grade and kindergarten in the future?
I mean, because Broad Creek is gonna be a International Baccalaureate, and that's going to be grades, K through 5. So if we're paying the money for 3 through 5, why not?
For purposes
Yeah,
of bringing some closure to this item, is there anyone that would oppose the contingency plans for expanding? There is land there. We see there's land. In the future, for expanding down to include K-8, is there anybody here that would oppose that contingency for development beyond the opening of it next year? I'm just curious. Dr. Gable's the only one saying she has some issues there. I wondered if.
I would have no opposition to that,
Anybody?
I'm not voicing opposition either, but I want to go back to
Why they had it?
Why you went
No,
3-8.
why.
And we know
Okay.
that because of the
Okay.
facility issue. You
Okay.
couldn't put all the little bathrooms in all the little rooms you needed to.
Let me make one other comment on the K-8 piece, and that, for me, whatever this board decides in terms of the direction that we want to go. But I will inform you that years ago, when this discussion
Right.
came about,
Right.
and the 5 K-8 schools in each of the zones or districts of the high schools, it was around opportunities and options.
Right.
Opportunities for that smaller learning context for middle schoolers, as well as the continuity and transition from 5th grade to 6th grade, and then also the opportunity for those who would prefer the traditional middle school experience. And so it would provide those options throughout and opportunities throughout the city, at least in each of the high school districts. Now, of course, there was some philosophy issues surrounding the pros and cons about K-8 schools as it relates to academic achievement and so on and so forth. And that was, you could find research supporting both as I remember it. But that was the rationale when we were discussing it back in 2009, 2010, just for information. And so I would certainly not be in opposition to it.
At this point, is there anyone seeing a compelling need to move, other than Lafayette One No's possible expansion, to move into any other ambitions for initiating another K school?
No.
Could happen, could come about, but at this point, I'd like to move on to the next one, but just say that to address that item that a school board was very adamant about, it appears as though with the completion of the 3-8, with the contingency of expanding it in the event that the future might call for that, we can move on, but there's no plans now for future boards to consider additional Ks.
One thing that you might keep in mind is that when we were looking at the Campus Stella, we talked about K-5, and then the administration brought back research from, I believe, 5 different cities that strongly showed that the K-8 was beneficial academically, which is one of the reasons why we went to K-8 with Campus Stella. So it just, at that time, it occurred to me that we should be looking at more K-8s because it definitely benefits the student. So
But at this
that's my
time,
thought.
at this
I
time,
can come up with as much research as shows you can, too. You cannot.
Well,
I
we
mean,
didn't
Washington,
receive
DC
that research
Washington
when-
DC had also all K-8s, and now they're going away from
Okay, well, I'm just saying that when we were looking at that, the research seemed to me to be pretty convincing that it benefited students. This is the reason why we entertained the Campus Stella Elementary as a K-8 school, even though there was some discussion about the community at that time wanting a K-5 school. So,
but at this
I just wanted
time,
to throw that out.
we could be open to the future, but at this time, the 3-8 Granby may conclude this initiative that was identified 5 or 6 years ago, but being open to anything else in the future, and particularly, Dr. Gabriel, being open to the expansion in the event that what's going on at Crossroads and what's going on at Ghent and what will go on at Campus Stella says we really want to do that. Can we move on to the next one? Processing pre-K, analyzing the comments and knowing that the Poverty Commission plus several key council members said do it. What I hear from this most of all is, let's do it. This goes to our budget conversations that are upcoming. This goes to a whole lot of things. I know it also goes to more money, but I think it will also go to an item for more additional learning time. But all of our comments, so I'm just going to say, anybody have anything else they want to say regarding this?
Yes, just as long as we are clear on what it is.
Yeah, what the it is.
Yes. You know, people say do it,
Yeah.
and different folks have,
What
in
the
my
it is.
view,
Yeah.
different definitions.
Let's
of what
talk
it
about
is.
now K meaning 4, K4.
Yeah.
You can't do K3 until we do K4. So K4, are you comfortable with that initially, Mr. Jordan? With the it being K4?
I think you're talking highly qualified, right?
Yes,
Qualified.
yeah, I think yeah.
Highly qualified, rigorous, competitive,
Yeah, what is
sought
the
after.
content of the delivery versus the age receiving the content, right, Rodney?
Yeah, I mean, I support the expansion.
Right.
I just think we need to be clear on, that we don't get back into a whole discussion about wait lists. It's far bigger than wait lists.
You use the word universal. I've invented a term. I love inventing my own terms. What I said, pre-K for more, leading to pre-K for all, which I think.
That's beautiful.
I've just, see, you got that? Because that becomes universal, but if I start off with universal, we may have folks, you could get stoned over any number of words, but do all of us here, yeah, anybody say anything
I
regarding this?
have several comments.
Yeah.
I would like to see reflected in our budget goals for next month's meeting, again, the line item of taking the current 4-year-old wait list. What funds are needed in order to eliminate the current wait list? And then the other topic would be, we had some discussion about bringing middle-income families into Norfolk Public Schools and perhaps charging for kindergarten. And there was discussion about whether or not that was even allowed. I don't see Jack here, but I would like to have a definitive answer back from the administration, if that's possible, as to whether or not we can charge, if there's limits onto what we can charge, because I would like to entertain the notion seriously of offering at least 2 or 3 classes of 4-year-old pre-K to those families who do not qualify for the current pre-K classrooms that we have, to see if that's going to attract and retain strong academic families, which ties back into one of our priorities and the strategic plan. But it doesn't seem like we've made a move on it for the past 2.5 years, and I'd really like to see that come to fruition. Because I think it ties into, as I mentioned before, our priorities. So what I'd like to know is, what are the barriers, or is it legal for us to charge tuition if that's necessary, because I know we don't have it in our budget to operate those classrooms, and what are the ramifications? And then, hopefully, what I'd like to see is opening up those doors in the fall of 2015.
Okay, I would like to offer what has been secured so far, because we've been talking about this for a while.
Mhm.
And I do recall that Teaching and Learning had some discussion with council and that kind of approach. And we did get some response about tuition and what the implications were legally. So I didn't ask you to bring that
Right.
documentation, but.
And I'm going from memory, and what we received was verbal. But it essentially said that as a public school institution, we could not charge tuition to children who reside within the city of Norfolk, because we are a public school institution. But then conversely with that, and this is where Jack was going to do some additional research for us, is that the code is specific to K-12. So he was going to do some additional research to determine if we had any leeway with pre-K. Because the code is written for public schools, but it specifically references K-12, and we were specifically looking at pre-K-4. And to my knowledge, we haven't received that in writing from him yet at this point.
One avenue would be to get a friendly opinion from the Attorney General. Ask a legislator to ask the Attorney General for an informal opinion on that.
Yeah.
And that's an
They
easy
can do
way,
that.
that's an easy way to get an answer on that, so.
They can do that.
They can do that. Seem to happen a lot.
Just one question. Is there any comments from Mr. Wolf or anyone else? But Mr. Jordan, what's important to me is that whether you're comfortable with what we're assuming is the it.
Well, I go to your comment where you request that the superintendent submit a plan.
Yes.
And to me, that plan would define the it.
Okay.
And then we would know where to go from there.
Anybody other comments on this topic? Because I'm getting ready to take the yellow note off and put a green note up with the 2015 on it, and ask the superintendent. Again, I'll always love what I write, but I'd like to get a recommendation and a plan. I don't want to keep talking about this. Poverty Commission said go, City Council member said go, Governor says go. I'd like to try and go, and I'd like to change the yellow note to a green note
Yes.
in just about a minute.
And I think it's super important for our district. Super important.
Dr. King wrote a letter to the editor, an item supporting that too. So can we change that to a 2015? And Dr. King, can you develop a plan to make that happen? And defining the it, and Mr. Jordan, hopefully the it will be clarified to the point that all of us will be comfortable with it. Let's do it. Next one. Open campus. Boy, we need to talk about that. Good job. It's done.
It started.
Beyond that, fiber to targets. While I'm changing these notes to from yellow to green, please, poverty targets. Any comments on poverty targets at all?
Dr. Stewart, can you go back to open campus for a second?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go back to open campus.
Yeah, just to, you said it's done, and I said it started.
That's right. Well put. I take it back. It started.
So I still think we have to be clear again on maybe where it is that we hope for it to be next year, and not just say it's done and therefore there's nothing else more for us to consider. So the plan that we received initially is much more ambitious than where we are today. And so if we're going to be supporting the next phase of getting to the ambitious part of it, then I think, you know, we have some students there, we know we're going to see how they do. But if the plan is still going to be to get to the ultimate vision that was described, I think that's worthy of hearing what that next phase might look at, and for us to
So
consider.
your request would be to have a plan for the future.
For the next phase.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking specifically monies that are needed to open up maybe more for whatever the second wave of students might be, like the overage for grade, because that seemed to be a.
I'm just saying, whatever they define the
Yeah.
next phase
Yeah.
to be, you know, bring that to us for.
Any other
consideration.
comments regarding open campus to be considered at this point? Can we put a sticky note up here that says,
Dr. Savigny has a comment.
Dr. Savigny?
Or actually, when you get finished sticking the sticky note next to open campus, we'd like to go back to pre-K for 37 seconds.
Let's go back, let's go back right
You
after
yield
we see, do you
37
have
seconds.
anything else for open campus?
37 seconds.
Huh? I'm gonna stick plan next, and hopefully the superintendent can present us a plan on what it's gonna look like in the next phases.
Well, and that will involve budget implications as well,
Yeah,
so that will have to accompany
Has
it.
budget implications, strategic planning implications, and everything.
37 seconds, go for it.
Hey, going back.
I want to remind everyone that because the funding formula changed for this current fiscal year for BPI, that you did commit funding to pre-K so that we could sustain and maintain what we had expanded the year prior. And we've not received any indication yet that they're going to revert back to the former funding formula, so that means we're going to wind up having to fund that deficit at
Locally,
this year,
right.
which came out to Michael's slide here, but $1.2 or $3 million. And then we will have to then find that money to keep what we have before we
Right.
add to it. So I just want to remind us of that. We want to maintain what
Right.
we have and then add to it. And we are participating with the state in a federal pre-K expansion grant. And we do not know if we will receive that, but we are working diligently through the submission process, and that's for the expansion and the addition of 10 additional classrooms. Those would still be identified by the at-risk indicators, but the state is classifying that as VPI plus. So we should find out in December if we are lucky and to receive that grant from the federal government.
Question, Mr. Jordan, do you see this next plan as being something we need to consider, again, November, December, January, in the next budget consideration?
Are you back to open campus?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, I went back to open
Okay.
campus. Didn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, whenever, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
So that there,
as soon
again, it
as-
comes to the superintendent knowing that by January 1st, we need to be having that kind of plan too. Is that cool? Any other comments on open campus or pre-K? These are things that people have dreamed about for years, and we've chatted about them for years, and we got it. All right, poverty targets. Any comments on that? I've got all what was assimilated here. The question is poverty targets. Any comments anybody wants to make?
Anyone who would like to have hyper-poverty schools, please tell me why. We have,
Define hyper-poverty, just
I mean, I'm
everybody who.
just for
the
example,
viewing
we
audience.
have several schools that are at 80 and 90% free and reduced lunch. You look at our data, you look at on-time graduation rates, you look at schools that have been consistently in the school improvement model, I mean, even long before, not just in Norfolk, but across the state and across the country. We have loads and loads and loads and loads of data that suggest not having hyper-poverty schools is a good thing. And so all this says is to begin a process of trying to have fewer of those. And so if there's any questioning why we should not look at that, then I'd just like to know what that is.
And let me state for the record again that I am in agreement with the notion and the need for more socioeconomic diversity and balance in our schools. This is something we have discussed for a while, and I think it's the how that we've not yet been quite able to wrap our minds and our arms around. But certainly the what, I am in full agreement with the need to do that.
Oh, well, I was gonna say, because to me, the what is an in, and all I'm trying to say is the how would be what we would ask the
Sure.
administration to come back with some recommendations to get there.
And I was only gonna offer that, at this point, I think that the only first major step that we have the opportunity to capitalize on is around what we were beginning to build in the choice. And so that is going to be something that the team is going to have to utilize all of the human resources and human capital possible to ensure that the way that we go about the lottery and the staffing process in order to begin to get more socioeconomic diversity is going to be of paramount importance. Because that means that you're going to have X number of choice seats. And if we're going to be true to what we say in our strategic plan, and which we are, then we're going to look at the research around divisions that have already done so, begun to do so. And if you have X number of choice seats, how did they craft that in terms of getting a certain percentage of how did they craft that to get within those choice seats socioeconomic diversity? Because for us, those choice seats in step one, it's just the first step to begin to scratch the surface. So that would be one of the components of the plan, and then the next question would be how we enter into, as a team, more conversation around how to do this, with the notion in mind that the board is going to be supportive of moving toward more socioeconomic diversity. Because there's some examples, in my view, of choice opportunities that are on the table now with schools that we're having pretty robust discussion around, that if we end up in a situation where we, for whatever reason, cannot have the number of choice seats that we anticipated, then it's going to be scratching the surface even less. So with that in mind, that's just my comment on that. So.
Other comments from anybody else on poverty targets? Anybody?
The only other thing is I think it will tie into number 14 when we get to number 14.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And we can't, that's one of the reasons why I saw all this together over the past 3 years, is we can't do some of these things without doing all these things. Is there any philosophical aversion to saying we're going to have poverty targets? And then Dr. King, there was a commercial once where this guy said, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And then he looks at the camera and says, how can I do all that? Would it be possible to say that, and we had folks wanting to do this in 2014-15, I can tell you at least who one of those was, that you could put forth a proposal on how to begin this, and that obviously when we get down to redistricting, we begin to have some connection to that. Would you see it, could you accept the charge of putting together your initial ideas on this? And
sure, I think we got a clear example of some initial steps that we're beginning to take already.
Yeah.
So.
And so those could be put into first
begin to do
steps
that.
and possible steps, but not to have targets. Not to have targets is one way to go, or to have targets is another way to go. And the question is, do we want to have targets? Any comments? Mr. Jordan, do you want targets?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Anybody opposed to asking Dr. King to bring forth a plan? Again, probably for us to consider during the budget conversation about how we might begin to do something like that?
I think not to have targets would be difficult to even have a plan. I mean, how do you measure success?
Yeah.
With this effort without a target. And so Mr. Jordan offered a couple of years ago that if our district is 68, 69, 70% poverty, then a possible target would be that none of our schools would be more than that. And I think that's a reasonable target.
So the question is there, what are the thoughts on everyone? Do we want to say we want targets? And do we want to do a green note that says 2015 to begin some kind of planning in that direction or not?
I said yes.
Anybody? Silence is not necessarily consent. Remember, this is not a vote. This was just, did you understand the issue? And this, would you support further conversation? This is further conversation, and it's being honchoed by a real rip cracker. I apologize for that. But
What'd you call me?
no, I'll be the whip cracker. You're just cracking me. Do we want to have priority targets? Do we want to put 2015 and Dr. King? You want to do that too? Green note coming up.
Well, I don't know why they won't answer your question.
Well, I'll just.
I'm feeling for you over here.
Well, you've never been in this position.
I'm flipping
Right,
through
never.
I'm flipping through the John Richter piece. They took an initial stab. The administration added some of that into the transformation initiative. The John Richter committee is coming back together, so it seems to me if the strategic plan mentions it, so it's kind of there.
Yeah.
But unless there's some major objection, I think that's what I hear you
Is
asking.
there an objection to anybody for a
No.
green note to going up for two?
No. Let's move on.
All right.
You're
Here we go.
funny.
Learning time. Anybody comment on learning time? There's already a propaganda effort going on now. Anybody comment on learning time?
Just clarification. So, again, I think that, at least from my perspective, I've heard Dr. King mention at least two things that I think you may have mentioned in your comments, Dr. Stewart. So there's increasing the number of instructional days, and then there's increasing seat time, right?
And there's a modification of the calendar.
Right.
And the
without
modification of the
increasing
calendar, right.
Instructional days.
Right.
Also, so there are several different options to look at.
In my comments here, Virginia Beach has increased the school day. Various other places are considering when to start high school. There is a myriad of ways that people are looking at how to increase learning curve. One thing the SIG schools have done nationwide, according to the Great Schools studies, is schools that have done better have been schools where you had more learning time. These were the troubled schools. So the question is, it could be increasing the school day. It could be and here's a big one. We could put forth a request with every legislator in this area supporting, including the lieutenant governor, in supporting Norfolk getting a chance to start school before Labor Day. And if you got to say, why not? Why not give Norfolk a shot at doing that? But there's increasing the school day, so after-school programs, but this has big budget implications. This is not a balanced budget price tag to the city, but it's a big item, and this is my biggest item. But there's one person in this room that put down 2015 that really meant a lot to me. And when he put down, I can do this in 2015, do we want to go for this? Do we want to explore all the options for how to increase learning time? And then make some decisions on it budgetarily and whatever. Remember, you just heard Mr. Williford they said we had to do it. Virginia Beach has increased the day. Fairfax has increased the day. There's a lot of options. I just want to hear what the superintendent says. How can he do it? I'd like him to do all of it. Start school before, increase the school year, increase the school day, more after-school time, more summer school time. I'd like to see them all, but I think it starts with a proposal. And again, what do you think?
Well, I would like to be able to look at several options so that we're keeping budget in mind, because there are some examples that are more costly than others.
Right.
So I would like to have the opportunity to really look at 2 or 3 different models that we can propose that we can consider. Now, as to that timeline in terms of being ready for the following school year, that's questionable. But
Right.
we can go after this with the notion of attempting to be as aggressive as possible, considering quality with that. So,
With all deliberate speed.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, could all other members speak regarding the whole idea of learning time? And obviously, this is what I'm passionate about, but maybe I'm passionate about a lot
I
of
think we
things.
should try to use the
legislative breakfast to discuss starting school, specifically for the city of Norfolk, to begin the process of starting school before Labor Day.
Mr. Stolley has introduced legislation 3 years in a row
Mhm.
in an attempt to do that. It's just
And
been
if we,
pushed through.
and if we already have a number of priority schools, a number of focus schools, of which one of the tenets are to increase academic learning time, and we're asking for the state to support us in increasing learning time, then it just makes sense to allow that process to be fulfilled. So I would support that. I would also support some summer school hours, further summer school hours. I know that they've done some very good work with the United for Children programs, but especially for our focus and priority schools, to begin that process of increasing their enrichment and their retainment of the material that they learned, so that we can make those accelerated gains that are necessary.
So what would be useful and informative for me as it relates to decision-making is to see the wide range of options that we have, costs associated with it.
Yeah.
And what would be necessary in order to implement. So we know starting school before Labor Day, you need
And
an
maybe more.
authorization from, XYZ. Extending the actual school day, starting a little earlier or ending earlier, what would that cost? Is that a local decision-making
It is.
process? So, and that would be a part of that charge. So we would see what our options are.
What does it cost?
Yeah, what it would cost,
Right.
and who has the authority to make the decision. So how much of it is within our local range of authority and that cost? And then what requires authorization and support from Richmond, be it VDOE, General Assembly, yada, yada. So we can see that, then we can make an informed decision as it relates to our budgeting, our planning, our lobbying, and all.
Right. Other comments from other board members? I'd like everybody to have a shot at just chatting about this.
Just one.
I'm interested in having the options brought back by the superintendent.
What they might cost.
I accept that.
Right.
In general, and thought that, that this is long overdue. It probably should have been done as much as possible as we could have done it last year.
Yeah. Anybody?
Well, the governor has given Norfolk special attention in his educational priorities. And so, to me, if there's something that's low-hanging fruit that we
Right.
want to ask him to champion and carry immediately, this might be a way of taking advantage of his support for the district. So there may be something in there that we can do right now in addition to the other items that, may be longer term.
Dr. King, if I put 2016 or before, are you comfortable with the kind of proposal of planning as opposed to putting 2015 on there?
Right, 2016 school year, right.
And exploring all the options and saying, to extend the school day, it's gonna cost this, that, and the city's gonna wanna know the answer to that.
Right.
Okay, we got a green note. Partnerships, there we go.
The other thing I think this will do is help further transform the transformation initiative, when we put it all together. So I think it only enhances that which we're trying to do now, but within the confines of the hours we're given today.
Dr. King says 2016 or before.
Yes.
But then, we're considering all these things within context of pretty soon coming up, talking about redistricting and whatever. Partnerships. Partnerships for the focus schools. Any comments or questions regarding that?
Is there a reason why you're limiting it to only focus schools?
Starting somewhere.
Okay.
Got to start somewhere. And originally, remember when we talked about conversion school initiative? The folks that were here, the conversion school initiative had a partner for every one of, at that point, 12 schools. So now, but we got to start somewhere, but that was originally part of the conversion initiative. Part of the partnership is parents, but this is just, again, all these items were things we said yes to 3 years ago. So now, how do we move them off the dime and move in? So
Again, I think a solid plan being designed by 2015
It's
um,
right here.
for implementation, and I think some of the work has been done, And I could see the Education Foundation as a part of that with those A-plus partnerships that they're already building as well, and there's a mechanism in place there. I know it looks slightly different from that of the public charter school recommendation, but I think there could be some integration of those two concepts.
One thing that was expressed to me privately is who's going to be the partner setting? I think we, the school system. I don't think someone else is in charge of saying who's going to be our partners. I think we, the superintendent, governance team, Carlos, we identify who we think is going to be best for those schools. But, Dr. King, would you accept the charge of trying to pull together some recommendations for partners for the next school year? And again, would you support, you know?
Well, let me offer a thought, and I can hear responses around whether this aligns with the intent of this approach or not. Because part of the training that schools are receiving right now is around bringing in their community, which would include business owners as partners, period. And in my view, that will become really the essence and the core of the plan to do this, because each school is now being trained to do that. So really, ultimately, each school will begin to develop partners in that way. That's really a pretty seamless approach to it without having to add another piece.
No, not add another piece.
Yeah.
Just build on, this is what we talked about, you talked about,
Right.
with conversion schools,
Right.
3 years ago.
So each school would have that committee of about, usually probably around 10 or 11 individuals. It would consist of business partners, business owners, faith-based, a number of categories of stakeholders that would be a part of their team to develop their site-based plan, and really would become their team of ambassadors for each particular school. So I think that aligns with that, is what I'm saying.
You're already moving there, and you can, questions and comments from anybody else, any other governance team member regarding the idea of partnerships, initially, Ms. Doyle, not forever, but initially for focus schools, for the folks. Not, because hopefully we'd have them for everybody. Any comments or questions? Are you comfortable, Dr. King, if I put a 2015 in the thing?
Partnership, in this one, you're 2015 for beginning the partnership approach for focus schools.
Proposals, yes.
Proposed, yeah.
Proposals. Ed, were you going to say something?
I was, because I'm still,
Dr. Jordan.
I'm still a little confused, because my notation, I think, kind of aligns with what I heard Dr. King say, in that we're already going down the path of doing this. And so unless there's some other special definition of partnership, then in my mind, it's like started, like we said, with Open Campus. Because if the strategic planning teams are already, or whatever they're called at the school site, already going to be doing this,
So put plan next.
or the planning and management teams like we heard with the Winona School, it sounds to me like we're already down that path.
So what we put up there is plan next steps?
Yeah, I'm not sure what else we need to do at this point, other than maybe get a report.
I would call it it's emerging as a 14-15 school year.
Okay.
So we should complete that process and enter into their site-based plan by the end of the school year. So I'm thinking our goal would be for completion for focus schools by the beginning of next school year. This is 14,
So
15,
plan
so
next would be
15,
appropriate,
16.
and you could present us a total picture of what you see as the different partnership arrangements. It could vary for each site, right, based on what the team comes up with?
But just for clarification, you're doing this at all schools,
All
correct?
schools, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Not just focus.
not just focus.
Good.
Yeah, this is for all schools.
Partnership with EPMS.
No, I'm not at that level. I'm saying at the,
That's ideal.
business.
associated with the strategic plan, the site-based plan that each school is doing,
Right. Is
They
they're
are
looking at
bringing
to find
in-
community,
they're bringing in
business.
partners, individuals, who are going to serve on whatever the definition of that, whatever it's called. And that forms the basis of
Their
partnerships.
plans, yep. And those partners are serving on their planning teams.
Right.
So.
So the whole thing is just to tell us what the plan is.
Yeah, so maybe it's
By school, right?
Yeah, maybe it's an update. Maybe for us, it's just updates that we're gonna get at our work sessions anyway.
Okay.
I just think this might be done
Gotcha.
or started, is what I'm trying to say.
Plan
Yeah,
update,
I
how about
agree.
that? No date. Redistricting. Any comments that came about?
Well, let me ask you about this, because isn't this really part of the educational plan?
What?
John Richter, it all kind of ties together, doesn't it?
I think it does.
Right. So that ties with what we've talked about earlier. So is it really, are we titling it correctly?
Well, there's an issue. We could have started redistricting this year and then retrospectively worked on a whole bunch of other issues. Or we can say, we're going to redistrict at this date and then coordinate a whole bunch of issues. So it's the win of this redistricting. We haven't redistricted high schools since 1972. So this redistricting thing is a big piece, and this is not something, Norfolk did this 25 years ago. They redistricted, and 3 years later, they redistricted again. Where's Karen Bailey? Do you remember that? That was a disaster. So we don't want to have false starts on this. We want to have a good plan of when we really think we might redistrict that ties into CTE, perhaps public school conversation, perhaps any number of things. So the question is, do we want to redistrict? And then, if so, when does Dr. King think all these initiatives fit in together for that redistricting?
So,
Do we want to?
These, in my view, the whole notion of redistricting will tie back into the poverty target plan, which is going to be on the table for continuous discussion as of next month. So from that, more than likely, will come some implications for redistricting because of the options that will be considered. So I think that is an item that ought to be on the table for that committee for discussion and review as well. So I think we got
So we'll
the
just
perfect opportunity.
suspend that right now for further consideration at the next.
I think that, like, for example, the poverty targets,
Right.
as well as redistricting.
Right.
Those things ought to be discussion items and review items for that steering committee to reconvene, to continue the discussion.
Is that
based on the
doable by
data that we
November?
have.
Is that doable by November for discussion, or would that have to go into December for discussion?
The committee will reconvene in October.
Mhm.
So, that would be a time to outline the items that will be on the table. I don't think that would be complete by November.
So it was a post, okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it would be complete by November. I would say it would be in motion as far as discussions around both of those
So we can
items.
leave that one and move on to future ones. And again, we're going to need more time in November to finish these. And there's an emerging item, I can't help but mention, governor's school issue that we need to deal with. But Dr. King, do you see that as maybe we need to suspend any vision for that and the poverty? Dr. King?
You bring up a good point. If we have these emerging issues, then I think redistricting needs to be moved forward, or looked at it at a more rapid pace than what we may think it is, because we have these opportunities and necessities that's going to require us to look at the way the district lines are drawn.
Any comments from anybody on redistricting?
Well, yes, this is already a part of the plan. I mean, I agree that working in accordance to the timeline of the steering committee.
Well, DeJohn just told us what he saw needed to happen. He didn't tell us when to do it. That's what we got to decide.
And the steering committee will have the task of taking a look at the statistics that we already have and the notion of the poverty targets, and we'll be able to brainstorm how we want to go about beginning the steps or continuing the steps of going for socioeconomic diversity, which could include, additional choice, which is what we have begun, but it also could be a combination of that and a proposal for redistricting in phases.
Right.
So I recommend that.
Good point.
That it be placed on that agenda, which those meetings will
Perhaps by
begin
December?
by October. Those meetings will begin in October.
Right.
So.
For us, maybe to rediscuss in December?
I would say we could get a status report and update on where we are with the steering committee at that point.
Is that cool? You're gonna put no green notes there.
Can I ask a question related to that?
Yeah.
Specific to the Winona area school. So you all are already working on, somebody's already working on whatever that's going to look like, right? When would that's not going through the John Richter committee, is it? So when would that be available?
We, after the holiday, we should have in place the tenets of the plan in terms of how student selection will take place. Because for that particular school, the notion of socioeconomic diversity is going to be tied into that.
Right.
And the expectation of the committee for Lafayette Winona is to utilize all of the research that's already out there or examples of districts that have done it and work with legal to determine how to secure X percentage. And then, of course, a discussion of that committee around what will be the demographic makeup. When we say demographic makeup, what's the mix between free reduced lunch students compared to none? And then how are we going to create a lottery process that will allow us to secure that target? And so I would expect that by the end of the holiday season that will be complete, if not before.
And associated with that, at one point, there was conversation around also revisiting how the out-of-district transfer process works. Is that part of that same piece, or is that a separate piece?
That's a separate piece. That's a separate piece, because, like Mr. Biggin, we've already talked about that. And I don't know if you want to comment on that in terms of what the administration or your department has begun to do with other departments to get ready to review that.
Right.
So.
What we've been doing is pulling historical practice and looking at what we're doing now in regard to how the student support services under the direction of Dr. Lands, they approved those. So we are gathering feedback and looking at practice, and we'll be pulling together the internal team again to make some final decisions in regard to having a practice that will carry us forward as we move into the choice era officially. Because we're not comfortable yet with the policy the way it is once we make that transition. So we've got to enhance it, and that's what we're doing right now, is pulling all that information together. And we'll bring the internal team back together within the next few weeks, so we'll have things that we can share, because that came up again last night at Larchmont, and we're working on that, but it hasn't been completed yet.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe that could be the first step. Just come back with recommendations and policy impact just on the out-of-district piece and getting that done. And then that could then play into whatever, by the time the steering committee and other things.
And you mentioned something really critical, phasing. You mentioned phasing.
Sure. Let me take a step back to the Lafayette Winona discussion. Dr. Charbonnet?
Yes.
You know that I mentioned, I threw out some timelines, and I know that you're working with Mr. Smeagol and that committee. And so part of that will center on the process for selecting the students and establishing a proposed demographic makeup as it relates to socioeconomics for that school. So all of those indicators are part of what the committee will be discussing and bringing to administration and then bringing it to the board. So timeline-wise, my initial statement was that I would anticipate that work would be at completion by the holiday or the end of the holiday season, or you may have a different timeline that was discussed outside of what we did initially. So let me ask you to comment on that if you want to tweak what I said. Okay.
We actually have a meeting Friday of this week for the SPMT, and that is on the agenda. We had the meeting that Elizabeth Mather referred to earlier, and the urgency there was that we're trying to also get the process for those students to coincide with the process that we're developing for the online application. So we are looking at having that done by the mid-year. So I'll know more Friday because, of course, the committee will have to look at exact dates and the process, which we began talking about at the last meeting. So I think by the next meeting, we should have something for you definitive in terms of the timelines and the application process.
Right, and so timing around that, for the board's awareness, timing around that is going to be crucial, because as we develop that, the next piece is communicating it out to everyone in a timely manner, so that they feel that they've had enough time to know what's to be expected and how selection is going to take place. And so the whole notion of completion of those indicators around selection is going to have to include the committee doing its work, bringing recommendations back to the administration, opportunity for cabinet to have open discussion around it, and then bringing recommendations to the board. And then at that point, we would have to do it in enough time so that if the board had some ideas about modifying, that we give enough time to go back to modify and still be in good standing with getting it out to the community, doing the selection for students in a timely manner so that we'll be on point for opening for next school year. So,
my arrow's
to answer
almost,
your question,
my
so
arrow,
yes,
yeah.
we would do that.
Right
We
now,
would
I'm
do it,
gonna
but
put
timing
down
is- timing
waiting,
we have to
I'm gonna
use
put
right.
down wait as a green thing, wait under redistricting. My arrow's almost up, and let's review quickly. Under redistricting, we're gonna put wait, because there's some things in process. Under partnerships, the plan's already, what we're gonna get is an update from you, Dr. King, on how things are progressing, not just for focus schools, but for everyone. Under learning time, I am unbelievably grateful. We said we want more, and we're going to be talking about the options plus costs for those options of 2016 or before. For poverty.
What date will you attach to that on the increased learning time and the models that?
You mean
Options
when
and
you will
models.
give it to us?
Right.
What I envision here is all of these could come to us in writing, and then we could schedule any group time for chatting. So all of these, you need to, you've got a lot of things to do. But
That's why I asked you today. That's why I
Yeah.
asked about the date.
I think all of these could come in the written form, and probably would be good to present them all at the same time, so that they could be considered one with the other as a coherence. So I think you need to come to us and when you think, but if it's going to be considered in the budget process, obviously, we're talking about.
I'll get
this-
back to you.
Yeah. I was envisioning by January 1, so you have a lot to do over the Christmas holidays. But in summary, poverty targets, sorry, I'm smiling when I say that. Your wife does not smile. Poverty targets 2015, that we believe in those targets, and it will be defined by Open Campus High School. We need a plan next, because it's not over, it's just beginning. Pre-K, all of those things. Now, it's a little bit presumptuous and a little bit mean, but notice there wasn't a green note up here for CTE. I'm just going to say them. They'll tell us what's going on, but hopefully, at some point in time, the them needs to become the us.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and then we need to make it happen. And then there's some things emerging next, and probably down the bottom needs to be this governance school issue that we need to address. So, Mr. Chairman, my mother used to say when it was dark, and I said, I just need 10 more minutes, she said, you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. You give me an hour, I want 2, but I'll say I'm done for now. Dr. Gabriel, are we done for now? It's so much fun to go over to Dr. Gabriel's house where she's being super mom, where she's being a physician saving lives, and then we're working on this. But I think we've made our timetable. We've got 2 minutes to spare.
Well done. Good and faithful, sir. Thank you all again for the work, Noah and Warren, that you all are doing in this. I thank you. Really helping us to move forward in a focused way and an involved manner for all of us. So thank you. All right, I think it's been a good work session and efficient, I will add. So I would ditto the remarks and sentiments of Dr. King on the preparation and delivery of the items by the staff, and thank you all very, very much. Outstanding. Okay, Warren, anything else?
No, sir.
Rodney?
Thank you for the opportunity, particularly for the dream for more learning time, because that's going to help everybody.
Absolutely.
Just a reminder of the summit on schools in challenging environments, going to be December the 11th. I know that there are a limited number of seats, but I know Norfolk is getting a certain number of slots, I think 8 to 11, something like that. And hopefully all board members can attend, but if not, then if we can let Dr. King know, because as the slots for the governance team frees up, it gives him additional opportunity to include staff. So
So the 11th?
December the 11th, it's going to be in Richmond at BCU. And that's going to be the, sir?
What are the times?
I don't know that yet. There was a save the date that came out. I can't remember if it had a time to it. But I was mentioning earlier about the governor adopting, this was being somewhat facetious, adopting Norfolk schools, but this is part of that collaboration that VSBA and the governor's office and the state VDOE have set up to begin to really tackle some of these issues that we've talked about today. So,
Mr. Jordan, can you include me? I'd like to be included.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Unless you need the spot, Dr. King, and I'd be happy to yield it to one of your colleagues if you need.
So I just wanted to put it out there so they would have time to adjust if needed.
Thank you. Noel?
You want final comments? Sure. Just like to thank Dr. King and the cabinet for their presentations for today. And I think it's great that we were started on time, ended on time. It's
Almost started on time.
almost.
Next time, we will.
Yes.
Mark my words.
It's on time for me.
It just comes easy.
Mark my
Do
words.
you have a whip too?
No, but I'm confident we will start on time next time.
Cultural sensitivities. Yeah, I know, I mean, this whip stuff, you know?
Again, my thanks to all of our staff members, our teachers, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our security officers that are working in our buildings every day to make sure that the students are safe, have a good learning environment, of which I received some positive emails about how students do feel safe in their classrooms and are academically challenged. And I was very happy to see that. I wanted to say thank you to the parents and families who came out for the Campostella meeting for the construction of their new school, and to the families and teachers and staff who came out for the Larchmont meeting for their new school. I know it takes time out of their day, but I'm glad that they're engaged in the process, and I hope that they'll continue to be engaged, not just in the school construction, but in the implementation of everything that's going to come thereafter. So, that's it.
Yeah.
I think, as Dr. Birdsong said, this process of doing subcommittees has been a good process, and it's been good for me to be engaged in the policy subcommittee. And I think that that is something that we need to do more of, because I think we do streamline the work of the committee. So yes, those are my comments.
Thank you.
Brad?
I'm going to use a football analogy. Where's Peter when you need him? But I'm really appreciative of the reports that we received from the different departments. It seems like we have our offense and defensive systems and our special teams are implemented, and we're moving them forward and mastering them in their implementation. I look forward to reaping the benefits of all the hard work. We can see beginning signs of that. We see the Tidewater Park is a prime example of that. The increased graduation rate at the high schools, especially Booker T. Washington. I'm just really excited that we'll see that continue, and it'll gain momentum. And get to the place where we need to be as a school system.
No more than thanks to the team, governor's leadership team. I think this is an example of progress in terms of the meeting, and we can even do better in terms of the efficiency of the meeting. So good job, everybody.
I want to thank Warren and Noel for their work on the master milestones. I think that's really helping us focus and move things forward, and we're seeing how there's some alignment with some of the work that we're already doing, but then the work that can be done in the future. And I want to echo what Brad said too. We have lots to be very proud of in this district, and I am proud to be a board member on this with you all and serving in a great capacity and serving the community, because we are serving the community. We're, servant leaders here. And I just wanted to thank the team tonight for a very strong meeting. And Dr. King, thank you for your leadership.
My pleasure.
Well, I made my comments already, so thank you all again for a great meeting, and we'll stand adjourned. Next meeting, October 15th, our business meeting.